Hey YouTube, RIDGID just dropped their brand new Nuke tools, and it's time to see how the current generation of drill and impact driver compared to their prior generation and see if they're worth the upgrade. So let's go ahead and get into that today on Tinker with Tools. Now, it used to be when tool companies would offer you various different types of tools, you could either choose portable and convenient, or you could choose something with power and performance, but you rarely got both of those in the same package. But more and more often, tool companies are now offering more compact tools that still offer an impressive amount of performance. That's where the RIDGID NUKE SubCompact tools kind of fit in. They are going to be an evolution of prior generation of RIDGID SubCompact tools, but now they're also going to be offering more performance and speed. Today I want to walk you through a new combo kit that features their hammer drill and a 4-mode impact driver and talk about how it compares to previous generation to see if it's worth your time to consider. But first I want to talk about where RIDGID SubCompact falls in the hierarchy of RIDGID tools and in the greater tool landscape. Now, RIDGID does still offer some entry-level brush tools. They are a little bit more few and far between, but that technically is their most basic tool offering. Then they come upon their subcompact tools, and that's where RIDGID NUKE is going to come in and sort of replace the prior generations of subcompact tools. Then they do have some mid-tier tools. For example, they have a mid-tier hammer drill that puts out more power than this, but it is a significantly larger tool. And then they have their top performance tools, which is going to be stuff like their high torque hammer drill. Now, when it comes to how they compare to other tool companies, whether companies use subcompact, compact, or even just make overall compact tools, there's definitely going to be offerings at a variety of different brands. But just because one company uses subcompact versus another company's compact does not mean that they're not necessarily competing in the same class. Now, with that out of the way, where it fits into the lineup, let's go ahead and talk about the combo kit that I purchased recently from the new NUKE SubCompact tools. And that is going to be the hammer drill and impact driver kit. And the reason why I went with the hammer drill version, even though I don't intend to use the hammer function on this tool a whole lot, is really just because that was going to give me access to the 4-mode impact driver, where if I purchased the drill driver version, I was only going to be getting the variable speed only impact driver. Now, both the drill driver and the hammer drill, and then the 4-mode impact driver and the variable speed only, are going to feature the same specs overall, but I do like having the different speed modes on there to be able to go ahead and use those as I see fit. You do also get some upgraded batteries when you go from the drill driver kit to the hammer drill kit. You're going to get a 4 amp hour battery, for example. So it was just nice to be able to pick up a little bit more value in that kit. And like I said, get the impact driver that I wanted to test out. Now, both of these tools are going to feature upgraded specs over the prior generation. And with the impact driver, it's going up to 2,000 inch-pounds of torque there. There's going to be increased RPMs, increased impacts per minute over here. Like I said, you're still getting 3 speed modes and an assist mode. That's something you were getting on the 4-mode impact driver previously. And then with the drill driver, you're going to be getting a plastic outer chuck, but with this hammer drill, you're actually getting an all-metal chuck. That's something I didn't realize when I bought it, but knowing that now, it definitely is something that I prefer on my drill. Now, we are going to be comparing today to a drill driver, so try not to focus on that too much. Obviously, you can get a drill driver version of this, and you can get a hammer drill version of this, but it's just not what I have today. The drill driver and impact driver from the previous generation subcompact, the drill driver is going to feature 500 inch-pounds of torque and a slightly lower RPM at 1,750. The impact driver is going to feature 1,850 inch-pounds of torque and overall a lower RPM on its drive as well. So we'll have to see how that kind of factors in with the speed and performance of the tools. Now, overall, the most compact drill is going to be the prior generation subcompact, but if you go with the NUKE version of the drill driver, you do get a smaller drill than what you're getting here. So there was a decrease in size there. When it comes to the impact driver, though, the impact driver 4-mode is actually going to be more compact in head length than what we're dealing with on the prior generation subcompact, but it is a little bit of a fatter impact driver when it comes to the head size. Overall weight increased a little bit too, but with the increase in power and performance, I do think it'll be something nice to see. Now, right out of the box, are there really any big differences between the tools? The all-metal chuck on the drill over here was something I noticed. With the impact driver, there was a slight change with the collet. They've kind of gone with a stubbier overall collet that has much less knurling on it. Now, I've never been a huge fan of the RIDGID collet, both for its auto-ejecting feature. Haven't been a huge fan of that. But this one in particular, if you get a bit that is put in there, and when you pull it out, it doesn't fully extend the collet. The collet actually recesses itself just a little bit, and if you have gloves on, for example, I find that it's a little bit harder to manipulate just because there's a little bit less collet sticking out there. They should have gone with a more traditional collet, in my opinion. It would have been a little bit nicer, but how it actually functions is identical to this previous generation. There's just a little bit less to grab onto. Something that stood out in the first few days. Overall, is it a deal breaker for me? No, but I just wish it were a little bit better collet that was on there. So now we're going to go to the performance testing. Now, with some of these tests that I'm doing, I'm pushing them beyond what you might use these tools for every day. For example, I doubt you're going to be drilling 1 3/4 inch holes with the RIDGID SubCompact drill, for example. But really, we're just trying to compare the differences in power between the different generations of tools so you can see what the difference is, if any, on there. So keep that in mind as you're watching the test. Now, the drills and the impacts were all tested on 4 amp hour max output batteries because that is what basically came with the new kit that I was doing. So let's go ahead and get on with the testing, and I'll talk about the performance numbers after that. All right, so performance testing. Let's go ahead and talk about the drills first. The biggest difference between these tools is really the Nuke model with its extra torque is really just able to power through more difficult tasks without having to drop down into speed 1. And I think that's where with this drill, for example, you're going to be more capable of doing a larger number of different tasks without necessarily having to turn to a larger tool. And so it makes it so this is a more capable tool that you can carry more often and cut down on the weight by doing that. That's where it stands out above the subcompact, in my opinion, is just being able to do a little bit more. Now, when we move over and we start talking about the impact drivers, that's where we saw an even bigger performance difference. And really the lower RPMs by almost 1,000 over here on the previous generation subcompact is going to be the biggest difference. But the old version did come in 60% slower almost than what it was in similar test. Now, the new 4 mode is not the most blazing fast impact driver, but it is a very competent upgrade over what you're getting over here and makes it a more useful tool overall and something where you're not necessarily going to have to feel like you have to go to something bigger, more powerful, or even faster overall right out of the gate. It just feels like a more capable tool, and that's where I definitely think it shines over the prior generation. Next big thing is when we talk about the differences in how the tools operate, or from the testing, what kind of other things did I notice with the prior generation of subcompact tools, especially on the drills. There is a slow ramp up when you start to go using the tool, whereas the new Nuke is going to be a much more immediate response. Now, this is something I've pointed out in the past, and people have defended it and saying that's one of the things they like about the tool. So I pointed out, not necessarily to bag on the previous generation. I'm happy they improved it for my liking in the new tool, but I want to point it out mostly so if this is a feature you love, you're aware that it has been made more like a traditional rapid response drill, if you will, in the new version, and that's something I think worth pointing out. When it comes to the impact drivers, the functionality is going to be pretty the same. The performance is just going to be better on the new one. I mentioned I don't love the collet. That continues to be the case. It's not a deal breaker for me, but it's definitely not something that I love. The most annoying thing that I think there is with it, and I wish I had a bit, I kind of do right here, is when you go ahead and put the bit in, you can see that the collet kind of retracts into itself. And when you go ahead and release the bit, sometimes it gets stuck in that retracted position. And now if I go to try and put this bit in there, it is no longer a quick insert collet. If I pull it out all the way, it stays stuck out in that previous position, and then it is a quick insert collet. But that is one of the most annoying things about both of these tools, but it's more noticeable in my opinion on the new tool because of just how stubby they made the collet on the new tool. But it's just an annoying little tidbit about the collet that I wish they would change and make a little bit better. All right, so overall impressions, I do think that the RIDGID NUKE tools that I've tested so far are definitely an improvement over what you were getting with the prior generation subcompact. If you're wanting more power and performance from those more compact tools, then this is a worthy upgrade in my opinion. But what I want to make clear is if you're expecting to get the Stealth Force level of performance from the rest of the Nuke lineup, I think you're going to be disappointed. But if you go into it with it framed as being an upgrade on the prior generation subcompact, I think you're going to be decently impressed with the tools, and I think you're going to set your expectations appropriately there. So there you have it. That is my review of the new combo kit that gives you the hammer drill and the impact driver. It is the way I would go if I were telling people to buy it, even though it's a little bit more money. So let me know any questions you have down in the comments below. Or if you want to see any of those other Nuke tools, let me know which ones you're most interested in. Maybe we'll see if we can pick them up. As always, if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Make sure to turn on notifications so you get notified when I put out a new video. But until next time, I appreciate your continued support, and I'll catch you on Tinker with Tools.